What it do, bruh? Talk of the town, Nintendo, Doc Trey still holding it down, still make the best games, and you know this, bro. It's the truth. If you don't like it, you can have that seatbelt.
So I think I may have figured out just who will be working on the Nintendo Switch 2 version of NetherRealm Studios' next game. Now, their next game is expected to be Injustice 3, um, according to pretty much all the leaks, and even Ed Boon's own statements himself. He confirmed that the main reason why they went with another Mortal Kombat game right after Mortal Kombat 11 instead of Injustice was because they were going to be switching engines, and if they would have had Injustice be their newest game on a new engine, it would have taken them too long to come out with a new game. So they were pretty much, it was a toss up between Mortal Kombat 1 and the next Injustice. Add to the fact that years ago there was the Nvidia data breach where a bunch of unannounced games were leaked there, and pretty much almost all of those games so far have been confirmed besides Injustice, and the title for that game was, I think it was Injustice Gods Will Fall. Who knows if that will actually end up being the actual title, or if this new game will actually even be called Injustice. There's a leaker out there that kind of implied that said something along the lines of maybe we need to get over the Injustice name, implying that maybe this new game, while it should be a DC fighting game, maybe it won't necessarily be called Injustice. But it looks like their next game definitely is Injustice related, because if you look at Ed Boon's Twitter for the past month or so, he's been posting nothing but Injustice stuff. So it's obvious that their next game is not Mortal Kombat. They're not doing 3 Mortal Kombat games in a row. Now, what's very interesting about this information here is that I actually found this exactly 1 year and 1 day to this date. So last year on August 6th, I uploaded this video, and I have found that a studio called Eden Industries was working on an unannounced AAA game using Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 5.6 to be exact. But because there were so many other games like that, there was plenty of games, and still to this day, unreleased and unannounced Unreal Engine 5 games for Switch 2, that it was kind of a nothing burger at the time, because there was no way, based on this description at the time, for me to figure out what that game could really be. So much so that I even changed the video to be about something that was more interesting that I found on the site, about how that team also worked on the Hogwarts Legacy Switch port, and that originally, before they were brought in for optimization, that it actually only ran at 2 frames per second on the original Nintendo Switch. Now you're probably asking yourself, so what has changed? Why do you think that this studio is working on Injustice for Switch 2? Well, a couple of things have happened from then and now. First, a little bit more information on this unannounced title. They say that it's an action title, right? It's an action title. It's a AAA title. It runs on Unreal Engine 5, and it's for Nintendo Switch 2. Now, when it comes to Mortal Kombat games and NetherRealm Studios games on the Switch, the majority of them were all of them really, they've been worked on by Shiver Entertainment. Now, with Shiver Entertainment being bought by Nintendo, acquired by Nintendo a year ago, the only games that Shiver Entertainment can now work on are either games that Nintendo has commissioned them to work on, or games that Shiver Entertainment was previously contracted to work on before the merger or before the acquisition. So if they had a contract that they signed prior to the acquisition, they have to still fulfill that contract. So I think that's one of the big reasons why Shiver Entertainment has made the 2 WWE games for the Nintendo Switch 2 already. It's because that was already in the contract. Now, I'm not sure if this year's version was in the contract and Nintendo just let them do that or not. But yeah, that I think that's one of the big reasons why they bought the company, but then their first 2 games are both WWE games. I think it's because they were already in the contract. But oddly enough, even though Shiver Entertainment made Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1 and Hogwarts Legacy for the Nintendo Switch, they didn't work on Hogwarts Legacy's Switch 2 version. And they haven't, NetherRealm Studios has not announced or come out with a Switch 2 version of Mortal Kombat 1. And also, this company, who actually was contracted by Shiver Entertainment to help them with both Mortal Kombat 1 and Hogwarts Legacy, also did not work on the Switch 2 version of Hogwarts Legacy. That was done supposedly in-house by Avalanche Software. So, that leaves you with this project that it's an unannounced upcoming AAA game. So the whatever game they're working on is not announced yet, and it's a brand new game. It's not a port. And they have identified that this is an action game. And you probably say, well, that's an action game, not a fighting game, Dr. Trey. Well, the reason I think that they say that this is an action game rather than a fighting game is because if they said it was a fighting game, there's not that many fighters out there, let alone fighters that they worked on. So if they said that this was a fighting game, it would be too easy to figure out exactly what that project probably was. So they probably just said action game, so they made it a little bit harder to figure out. But what's interesting though is when you look at some new hiring pages for NetherRealm Studios for their next project, they're hiring for a designer for combat. And under Essentials, it says passion for action and fighting games with a focus on combat mechanics. So even though they are making a fighting game, they are looking for people with a passion for action games, because a fighting game is technically an action game. So if we look at this listing again, it says overview. The client is a question mark because this game hasn't been announced yet. It says for Nintendo Switch 2, engine, Unreal Engine 5.6. Says with our specialized experience with Nintendo Switch hardware and programming, Eden Industries has been tasked to manage and create the Switch 2 port of an upcoming AAA game, including optimizations, engineering, and design support, and Unreal Engine specific conversions to meet Switch specifications. Our role is for UI engineering, art, and design support, Switch 2 specific engineering, including CPU, GPU, and memory optimizations, functional and certified testing, game conversion to lack support of Unreal Engine Nanite support on Switch 2. Now that one is interesting because this is so old that now there's been an update for Unreal Engine, was it Unreal Engine 5.8 or something like that. Now that specifically has support for Nanite Lite for Switch 2 and other devices like Switch 2 to enable Nanite to be utilized at 60 frames per second. So this fighting game is going to be 60 frames per second. So if this new game from NetherRealm Studios uses Nanite, this update to Unreal Engine 5 just made that much easier for this game to run on the Switch 2. And it also says responsible for the entirety of Switch 2 porting. So unlike where they co-developed Mortal Kombat 1 on Switch and co-developed Hogwarts Legacy on Switch with Shiver Interactive, they are responsible for the entire port of this game coming to the Switch 2. And that to me is another uh point that this game is more than likely NetherRealm Studios title, because since Nintendo now owns Shiver Interactive, they may or may not be available to work on NetherRealm Studios' next game for the Switch 2. And this studio just happened to co-develop uh NetherRealm Studios' last game and Warner Brothers, like their Warner Brothers' last two big games. They just happen to be the co-developer for the Switch version. So I think it's safe to say that whatever game they're working on will actually be NetherRealm Studios' next game, which will be Injustice or whatever the game actually ends up being called. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. All right, so I just realized that I made a mistake earlier in the video. I was confusing Lumen with Nanite. I was showing on the posting here that the project they were going to be working on was going to be a game that had a big emphasis on Nanite, and I brought up Unreal Engine 5.8 and the fact that it was going to be able to do Lumen easier on the Switch too. So I was getting Nanite and Lumen mixed up. My mistake. I would imagine that Unreal Engine 5.8 would also make Nanite easier to do on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well, but I misspoke and I was confusing Nanite with Lumen.